Have you ever found yourself standing at a crossroads, wondering whether you should consider moving to a nursing home as you grow older, or whether you can continue to care for yourself and live independently in the home you love? I've been in that very position, faced with that life-altering decision. When I was confronted with this question, I didn't realize the hard truths I would have to face. Looking back, I wish I had known these lessons sooner, and now I want to share them with you so that you can be better prepared before making a decision that could change the course of your life. If you're at this point in your life, wondering what path to take, I invite you to listen to my story, a story not just of material loss, but of emotional and spiritual shifts, and changes I never anticipated. In this article, I'll share the things I wish I had known before stepping into a nursing home, as well as the regrets that followed me throughout this journey. Before I decided to move into a nursing home, I lived independently in a home I loved. Every morning, I would wake up when I wanted, brew a cup of coffee, and sit by the window with my favorite book in hand, enjoying the peace and quiet I had cultivated over the years. But as my health began to decline and my family became increasingly concerned, the decision was made for me. They assured me that the nursing home would be the safest place for me, where I would be well taken care of. At first, it seemed like the right choice. But the moment I stepped through those doors, I realized that it wasn't just a change of location, it was a profound shift in the very essence of my life. I will never forget my first day at the nursing home. I woke up in a sterile room, far away from the comfort of my beloved home. The books I cherished were gone, my favorite chair by the window replaced by a bed I never chose. It dawned on me that I wasn't just losing my daily routines, I was losing a part of myself. It was a shift I never anticipated, and little did I know that each passing day in a nursing home would mean letting go of more and more of the life I had once known. These are the personal reflections I want to share with you. As you consider the truth about nursing homes, I hope you'll see aspects you might not have thought of before making your final decision. Life is not just about where you live, it's about how you live and the values you choose to hold on to. Take your time to think about what really matters most to you in the years ahead. 1. Loss of independence. When I first moved into the nursing home, I thought it would be just like a temporary stay. A change of scenery, I told myself, maybe a little less freedom than I was used to, but surely not too much of an adjustment. I never anticipated the profound loss of independence that would hit me like a tidal wave. The hardest part, the most difficult thing to face every single day, is the overwhelming realization that every single decision I make now, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, is no longer mine to make. When I lived on my own, I was free to choose what I wanted to eat, when I wanted to wake up, how I spent my day. But in a nursing home, that's no longer the case. Even the most basic, personal choices are dictated by others. The clock is no longer yours to follow. The times for meals are set, the times for activities are scheduled, and sometimes, you don't even get the chance to eat when you're hungry. It's as though your life is reduced to a series of pre-planned events that you have no say in. Take something as simple as food, for example. I remember waking up one morning craving a cup of tea and a bowl of oatmeal just like I would have made for myself at home. But when I asked the staff if I could have that for breakfast, I was told, "No, we're serving scrambled eggs and toast today." A small thing, perhaps, but it was a reminder that I had no say in what went into my body or how my day started. This wasn't just about breakfast or meals, though. It extended to everything. For the first time in my life, I realized that I was living in a structured environment, where I didn't control my day, my routine, or even the most intimate moments of my life. Decisions like when to take a walk or when to use the bathroom, things that I used to take for granted, were suddenly subject to someone else's approval. The loss of independence is not only physical but also emotional. When you've spent a lifetime living by your own rules, making your own decisions, and managing your own life, it can be an incredibly humbling and, at times, humiliating experience to have that taken away. You begin to question yourself, your worth, your ability to make decisions, your sense of self. The hardest part of this loss, for me, wasn't the practical side of it. It wasn't about missing the freedom to make a cup of tea or stroll outside when I felt like it. What was truly painful was the emotional impact of that loss. It made me feel like I had become a child again, dependent on others to guide me through the simplest of tasks. It was a blow to my dignity, and it left me feeling powerless, even though I was still physically capable of doing things on my own. I learned, too, that the loss of independence often comes with an unexpected level of vulnerability. The more you depend on others, the more your personal space, your privacy, and your sense of security are at risk. In a nursing home, privacy is a luxury that's rarely afforded. The walls of your room aren't just physical barriers, they represent the diminishing of your autonomy. People come in and out at will, sometimes without knocking. Staff members are always there, assisting you with your daily needs, whether you want it or not. It feels as though the very essence of who you are, the ability to control your own life, is slipping away, piece by piece. Over time, I began to miss the small things that once made me feel free, the simple joy of making a decision for myself, choosing my own meals, setting my own routine. It was more than just a matter of convenience, it was a matter of identity. By surrendering these freedoms, I felt like I was losing a piece of myself. The longer I stayed, the more I began to wonder if I would ever feel truly myself again. To loneliness. When I moved into the nursing home, I was prepared for a certain level of solitude. After all, it's not easy to leave your home and your family behind. But I never fully understood how overwhelming the loneliness would be until I found myself sitting in that sterile room, day after day, with only my thoughts for company. At first, my family visited often. It was comforting to see their familiar faces, to hear about what was happening in their lives. I was still a part of their world, still someone they cared for and wanted to visit. But as the months passed, something began to change. Those visits, which had once been a regular part of my life, grew less frequent. My family, too, had their own lives to live, and I began to sense that I was slowly fading from their daily thoughts. The loneliness that crept in was not the kind that comes from being physically alone. It was a deep, emotional loneliness that settled in my chest, day after day. I was surrounded by other residents, but I didn't feel connected to them. We were all living in the same building, but our lives, our histories, and our connections were so vastly different. I felt as though I was invisible to those around me, as if I were simply passing through, a fleeting presence in a world that was no longer mine to belong to. What made it worse was the silence. There were moments when the sounds of the nursing home seemed to fade away completely. No voices, no laughter, no familiar faces. Just the quiet ticking of the clock, marking time as it dragged on. I would watch the door, hoping for someone to walk through it. But the visits never came as often as I had hoped, and the days turned into weeks, then months, and I began to realize that this loneliness wasn't something temporary. It was a part of my new reality. Loneliness in a nursing home isn't just about missing your family, it's about missing the connection to the world outside. When you're cut off from your daily routines, your social interactions, and the people who once mattered to you, the isolation can be all-encompassing. The more I was isolated, the more I began to wonder if I had been forgotten. I questioned whether the people I loved still thought about me, still remembered the times we shared. And it wasn't just the lack of family visits that left me feeling alone, it was the absence of meaningful connections with the other residents. Many of them were dealing with their own struggles, their own health issues, and it was difficult to forge new friendships in an environment that felt so detached from the outside world. I found myself sitting alone more often than not, staring out the window, waiting for something to change. The emotional toll of this isolation became unbearable at times. I had never considered how deeply loneliness could affect a person's well-being. It wasn't just a matter of being by yourself, it was the feeling of being forgotten, of no longer having a purpose in the lives of others. That kind of loneliness cuts deep, and no amount of well-meaning visits can fill the void it creates. 3. Loss of purpose. One of the most jarring aspects of life in a nursing home is the profound loss of purpose that often accompanies it. When I was living on my own, I had a sense of direction. Each day, I had something to look forward to: tending to my garden, cooking meals, managing the house. These weren't just tasks, they were the things that gave my life meaning. They kept me engaged, active, and fulfilled. But in a nursing home, those routines were no longer possible. At first, I didn't realize how much I had relied on these daily tasks to give my life structure and purpose. But as the days passed, it became painfully clear. I found myself with nothing to do, nothing to look forward to. The routines I had spent years building, the small rituals that made each day meaningful, vanished. I began to feel like I was floating through life with no anchor to hold me steady. I wasn't the only one. I met George, an 84-year-old carpenter who had spent his entire life working with his hands. He had built homes, repaired furniture, and crafted beautiful pieces of woodwork. But in a nursing home, his hands, once steady and skilled, lay idle in his lap. He no longer had the tools or the space to do the work that had given him purpose for so many years. He told me that he felt useless, and in that moment, I understood exactly what he meant. Without the activities that gave us a sense of accomplishment, we were left with nothing but time. And time, without purpose, can feel like a weight. The loss of purpose is a subtle, insidious thing. It doesn't happen overnight, but over time, you begin to feel the emptiness creeping in. The things that once mattered, the simple joy of caring for your home or making a meal, are replaced by a monotonous routine that feels devoid of meaning. There's no longer a garden to tend to, no home to take care of, and the activities available in a nursing home are often lackluster and unfulfilling. It was through my conversations with George that I began to realize just how deeply this loss of purpose could affect a person. Without the things that once gave us meaning, it's easy to fall into a state of emotional and mental decline. You begin to feel like you're not just losing your physical strength, but your will to live. You start to question who you are without your purpose. And that can be a terrifying thing to face. 4. Declining health. When I moved into the nursing home, I had certain expectations. I believed that the staff would assist me with the things I couldn't do for myself, and that would ease the burden of daily life. The thought was that I would be able to rest more, focus on what I could do, and feel better for it. I never imagined that this would slowly lead to a decline in my own health. At first, it was subtle. I noticed that I didn't have to get up as often to cook, clean, or even go out for a walk. The staff would handle many of the tasks that once filled my day. I started to appreciate the rest and convenience of it all, but I never considered the long-term effects of this convenience. As time passed, I began to feel weaker. I didn't realize how much strength I had been using in my everyday life when I was still living independently. The act of getting up to make a meal, going for a walk, or simply tending to my personal needs were all small movements that had kept my body active and strong. But in a nursing home, I stopped moving as much. The nurses would bring my meals to me, and I would be taken from my room to the activities or therapy sessions. Even something as simple as choosing when to get up from my chair or when to move my legs was taken away from me. Slowly, but surely, my body began to weaken. I didn't recognize it at first, but I started to feel more sluggish. Simple tasks became harder. Brushing my teeth, getting dressed, and even standing up from my chair were exhausting. It wasn't long before I realized that the convenience of having others do things for me was contributing to my physical decline. Movement wasn't just a luxury, it was vital for maintaining my strength. And I had neglected it. It became clear to me that staying still wasn't just about comfort, it was an active choice that affected my body in ways I hadn't fully understood. Without moving, muscles atrophy, bones become weaker, and the body starts to forget how to function properly. What I had once taken for granted, the strength to get up, walk, and perform basic daily activities, began to fade away. One day, I tried to take a walk in the hallways, just to get some fresh air. It was a simple thing, but I was winded after only a few steps. I stopped, leaned against the wall, and thought about how far I had come, or rather, how far I had fallen. I hadn't noticed the decline, but it was there. I started asking myself what I could have done differently. Why hadn't I been more proactive in maintaining my health before moving here? I realized too late that the physical movement I once took for granted was the key to keeping my body strong, and now it was much harder to get back into the swing of things. Over time, I learned that being dependent on others for basic tasks, while convenient in the short term, leads to a dangerous decline in health if you aren't careful. I started making small adjustments, taking walks when I could, standing for a few minutes longer each day, trying to engage in light exercises. But the damage had already been done. I had neglected the most essential aspect of health: movement, and now I had to work hard to regain what I had lost. I've come to understand that, as we age, we need to make conscious decisions to maintain our independence in every way possible, even if that means doing things ourselves, no matter how small. Physical activity is the key to staying strong, healthy, and independent, and I learned that lesson the hard way. It was a hard reality to face, but I hope that others will take my story to heart and keep moving, no matter what stage of life they are in. 5. Loss of privacy and dignity. One of the things I never anticipated when moving into the nursing home was the loss of privacy and dignity that would come with it. Privacy, in any form, was something I had always valued throughout my life. Whether it was the simple act of being alone with my thoughts or having control over my personal space, I had grown accustomed to it. But that all changed the moment I entered the nursing home. At first, it was small things that I noticed: the frequent knocks on my door, the nurses coming in several times a day to check on me, and the constant presence of other residents in the hallways. But soon, these little intrusions became a daily reality that left me feeling stripped of my privacy. I had no control over who entered my room or when they would arrive. The staff would come in to administer medication, check my vitals, and make sure I was comfortable. While all of this was for my well-being, it began to feel like an invasion of my personal space. There were no moments of solitude anymore. But the real loss of privacy came in the most intimate aspects of daily life. As my health declined, I became more dependent on others for help with basic needs. Simple tasks: using the bathroom, taking a shower, changing my clothes required assistance. The nurses, kind and well-intentioned as they were, had to help me with things I once did on my own without thinking. This loss of independence, while inevitable, was an assault on my dignity. I remember the first time I needed help with a shower. It wasn't just the physical act of someone bathing me, it was the feeling of being watched, of being reduced to a state of helplessness. I had always prided myself on being able to care for myself, to maintain my own sense of autonomy. But now, I had to rely on others for even the most personal aspects of my life. I felt exposed, vulnerable, and embarrassed. The loss of dignity wasn't just about needing help, it was about how it made me feel, how I felt like I was no longer in control of my own body. The same was true for the simplest of tasks. Even using the bathroom became a matter of dependence. I never imagined that I would be in a position where I couldn't even use the restroom without assistance. But it wasn't just the inconvenience of having someone help, it was the feeling that I was no longer an individual, but rather just another number in the system. The loss of privacy and dignity in a nursing home is not just about being helped, it's about being constantly reminded that you are not in charge of your own life. You are subject to the routines, schedules, and expectations of others. It's a loss that can chip away at your sense of self-worth. And the longer I stayed in a nursing home, the more I felt like I was fading into the background, just another elderly resident, with my life dictated by the needs and schedules of others. I began to yearn for the simple moments of privacy I once had, the moments when I could close the door, sit alone with my thoughts, and feel in control of my own life. Those moments seemed so far away now, and the loss of dignity that came with a lack of privacy was something I had to learn to navigate every single day. 6. It's harder to leave than you think. When I first moved into the nursing home, I thought it would be a temporary arrangement. I imagined it would be just a short-term stay, a place to receive some extra care, and then I would return to my independent life. But as time went on, I began to realize just how much harder it was to leave than I had ever expected. It wasn't just about the physical challenges that come with aging. It was the combination of factors: physical decline, changes in family dynamics, and the financial costs that made it nearly impossible for me to imagine returning to a fully independent life. The idea of leaving the nursing home, which had once seemed like an attainable goal, became more and more distant as I adjusted to my new reality. Physically, I began to feel weaker. The more I relied on others for basic tasks, the harder it became to regain the strength I once had. I had become accustomed to a slower pace of life, and my body had adjusted to the limited mobility that came with it. The idea of going back to my own home, where I had to manage all aspects of my life independently, seemed overwhelming. The reality of aging had settled in, and with it, the acknowledgement that I wasn't as strong or capable as I once was. But it wasn't just the physical decline that made leaving harder. It was the changes in my family dynamics. Over time, my family's visits became less frequent, and I realized that my independence was no longer something they could easily support. They had their own lives to manage, and the responsibility of caring for me was something they had to face as well. It became clear to me that going back home wasn't just a matter of physical capability, it was a matter of family dynamics and resources. The financial costs of leaving were another factor that made the idea of independence feel unattainable. The nursing home wasn't cheap, and though my family had been supportive, I began to realize that I didn't have the financial means to maintain my own home and care for myself in the way I once had. The expenses associated with aging and healthcare were far more than I had anticipated, and they added another layer of difficulty to the idea of leaving. In the end, I came to accept that returning to my independent life wasn't as simple as I had imagined. The reality of aging, the physical decline, the changes in family support, and the financial challenges made it impossible for me to envision a return to the life I once knew. And though it was difficult to admit, I realized that staying in a nursing home was now my reality, a reality I had to learn to live with, no matter how difficult it was to accept. Looking back on my time in a nursing home, I realize how much I have learned about the fragility of life and the challenges that come with aging. It's easy to imagine that growing older is something we can control, that we can make choices that will protect us from the inevitable. But in reality, aging is a journey that none of us can predict or fully prepare for. It's about finding strength in moments of weakness, dignity in times of vulnerability, and purpose in what seems like a world of limitations. The loss of independence, the loneliness, the physical decline, and the loss of privacy, they are all realities that come with the aging process. But that doesn't mean we must face them alone or without hope. With the right mindset and support, it is possible to maintain a sense of purpose, to keep moving, and to regain the things we thought we had lost. It's easy to feel forgotten as we grow older, to feel like our worth is fading. But remember, each day is an opportunity to reclaim something that is uniquely ours: our spirit, our strength, and our ability to keep going, no matter what. So, if you are watching this and you find yourself facing some of the challenges I've shared, know this: you are not alone, and it's never too late to make changes that will bring you more joy, more health, and more fulfillment. To all the seniors out there, don't give up. Your story isn't finished yet. Even if the path seems difficult, there is still so much life to be lived. I want to encourage you to keep moving forward, no matter how small the steps may be. Your journey is important, and your well-being matters. If you found this video helpful and want to stay connected for more content on health, aging, and maintaining independence, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'll be here, sharing more stories and tips to help you navigate the years ahead with strength and dignity. Stay strong, and remember, you are never too old to start anew. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.